Fantastic. Got it. Enabling waiting room. Fantastic. So no more. So welcome everyone. Nice to see some familiar names here. Let me just record this session on the cloud. Thank you. Make yourself comfortable. Eat your lunch. I know it's dinner time, depending on where you're joining us from, depending on which time zone you're in. So thank you so much, everyone here. So before we start, I have my amazing colleague here to the right of me, who's going to be saying a few words and doing a proper land acknowledgement before we start the session. So Valerie, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last day of Power Skills. I'm really looking forward to this upcoming session. I have my notebook and pens. I'm ready to take this down. Before we get started, we're going to do an official land acknowledgement. Before we play the video, I'd like to say a few words. I would like to acknowledge that McGill University is on land that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous people whose presence marks this territory on which people from all over the world now gather. It is with respect for the links with the past, present, and future that we recognize the ongoing relationship between Indigenous peoples and other people within the Montreal community. Now, if you're not in Montreal, regardless of where you are, whether you're in Montreal or you're elsewhere, please feel free in the chat to let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love to see where people are presently. Personally, as the daughter of colonized lands, I encourage you to take the time to explore the history of the territory of where you currently reside. Learn the history, learn about the people who came before you. As we play the video, I'd like to ask that you all remain muted. Niall.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Valerie, for doing such a great land acknowledgement. And this, I know everyone heard it at all of our session. It's something that is very important. And again, you have to personalize it, as my colleague Valerie did it so well. And we encourage you to do this at the beginning of your meetings, webinars, and future events, as this is something that we must all learn to do. So now, without further ado, I'm going to start introducing your speaker, also letting you know that this session is live. So saying hi to everyone who's following us on the live page. And we encourage you to share this, whatever you're going to be learning in this session today, with your peers, your colleagues, your friends, your family. And as many people as you know, there's going to be an excellent recipe at the end of this session. And we are so happy to have the chance to have Chef Berlin Reed here with us. So to tell you a little bit more about him. So he is a curator, a chef, and a community organizer with over 15 years of experience in and around the food industry. He currently works as an independent curator at Atelier Etta and a community food program coordinator at DESTA Black Youth Network. His work centers the creativity of Black and queer lives and designs of spaces that invite people to expand their minds and palates in one bite. So thank you very much, and please give a warm welcome for Berlin.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers of the conference. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm going to be sharing today a couple of recipes, but I'm going to be doing it in a little bit of a non-traditional way, or a little bit of a hybrid, as this is a continuing ed conference, and we are talking about upskilling and professional development. I wanted to sort of connect this fun workshop and have these fun flavors, but connect that to deeper meanings. And so welcome to Meander and Muddle, and here we go. So in my typical Cancerian fashion, if I'm asked to relay stories, like automatically food is going to be the conduit of that. So I have chosen, I went shameless like with the metaphors and had a really good time just like really curating these 3 drinks to represent different shades or phases of my career. So gonna ride the roller coaster with me. And just wanted to say, as was already acknowledged, it is lunchtime, so absolutely feel free, sit back, be eating. Like there's going to be recipes or notes that can come later, so don't worry about being too academically attentive right now. Just sit back and listen to some stories and see some good food. So we are going to start. The first drink, there's going to be 3, as I mentioned, is called Eshu's Elixir. So if anyone's familiar with the Afro pantheon of deities, Eshu is, you can imagine Eshu's Elixir is going to be like a pretty big, a big ride. It's sweet, it's loud, it's up and down, it's predictably unpredictable. That's what Eshu is. Optimistic but clear-eyed, opportunistic without being malicious or predatory. Eshu is where he needs to be at all times. And that's the spirit that he comes through. So I always kind of relate my early years, my 20s, to Eshu leading the way, because it was a very, very wild, explosive time. But it all led eventually to a more focused future. And so it's fun to sort of start from there. And so I like to say it's the flavor of youth well spent, every cent. So we're going to start with Eshu's Elixir, and I'm going to actually pan the camera down so you can see the food a little bit more. That's pretty good. So to start, I'm just going to story tell as we're chopping. So we're going to start with my first real job. I took a big dive. At 16, I was actually the assistant manager for a very large chain retail store. Like, I did not just do the summer job thing. I really went full force. I was attending regional meetings with people in their 20s and 30s, and I was the 16-year-old sitting across from people doing job interviews that I'm sure they loved. So you can imagine I sort of took my work life seriously even at that age, and the juxtaposition of sitting in high school classes, hearing about what life was going to be when I was already working full time and hiring and firing people at 16 was a very funny start, but it definitely, what it told me, sorry, I'm trying to get both me in here. What it told me was that the best way for me is going to be to make my way. Like I knew that the traditional path was really not going to get where I needed to go, because I was already sitting in high school doing a job that people do in their after college or whatever. So I sort of took that as permission to just do things my way. And as every 16-year-old is looking for permission to do. So from there, I studied visual art. I was like in a b-boy crew. Like, I always laugh to say, like, my whole life was to like battle a guy named Lucky on the weekends. Like, that was 2 years of my life. Like, every single weekend I lived, I breathed dance. So I did that. I went to preschool and I nannied, and I learned to like bear unbearable things, to deal with small humans, to deal with sick humans, to make life and death decisions and have to stand by them, to decide things, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, that really had big consequences, and I had to stand by them no matter what. And I think as a young person, that's not an opportunity you're always given. And so, making the move to become an EMT was a departure at the time from studying art, but I'm so glad that I did, because the life skills that I got from that amount of responsibility and the perspective, everything else after you deal with life and death is like, I can do this. I feel very confident that any other decision is going to be quite all right. So from there, I moved to New York, was ready for a change. It was my mid-20s. and I decided I wanted to be a sommelier. Again, like you can already start to see the pattern is like, I just did what I want. It's like, I see a thing, I'm moving to New York. I don't want to be an EMT anymore. Let's check out wine. So I started in a wine store. I went from being in the wine store to being a cheesemonger, to being a cook, to being a butcher. And it was really the butcher job or that role that really started to sort of spur me off into my own career path rather than just sort of that job after job. So from there, the butchery, as I was sort of this ex-vegan butcher thing, which is part of my story, that allowed me to start writing. So I started writing about my experience as an ex-vegan butcher. That writing led to traveling, teaching. I was all over the place for about 3 years of my life. I was moving, constant movement. And, you know, in your 20s, that's really, really great. But also, you know, there's an unsustainability to that amount of movement and change. And it definitely got to a place where I could feel that it was important to keep adding to the sauce, keep adding and adding and adding, but I could also feel that something was happening and I would need to make a change. But, you know, typical again of youth, you know, the sweet and the sour was mixed and I loved it all and I just kept going. And that constant movement went for years past my comfort zone, to be quite honest. So, you know, at the time, I used to call myself a shark, but not because of ferocity or again predation, but because I began to fear like the cessation of movement. I began to fear that if I gave myself what I needed, which was rest and quiet, to take in all of those experiences and to use them towards the next phase, but I couldn't stop the train. And I felt trapped in the opportunities that were coming to me. It was to the point where even when I knew I wanted to stop traveling, like I was living out of a backpack and knives for 3 years. So it was like, I was really, really transient. And even when I decided I wanted to stop that, there was no stopping it. I was booked out a year ahead. So I was locked into this place where I really was fearful of stopping. And, you know, I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And, you know, soaking in the experience all the while. You know, I was really, really happy with the experiences that I had. I did pop-ups anywhere and everywhere. I cooked on a weed farm in California for 2 years, 2 summers. I rode in a NASCAR at racing speed, like over 200 miles an hour. I co-founded a queer chef collective in Brooklyn, and we did through raves where we did like edible sculpture. And we also did like accessible galas. So we would work with nonprofits to do like really big galas at a really high level, but using like queer sort of principles, we kept our costs down and were able to really like help people with low budgets have these really amazing events that brought in donors and things like that for them. So that was something we really had a lot of fun with. And that all led, you know, to writing a book. Wrote a book about my travels and my reflections on food. And all of that happened before 30, you know? So I was very well aware that it was a lot very, very fast. And I didn't feel like it was all being backed up. You know, I felt like I still needed time to grow more into all of the things that were being thrown onto my lap. And, you know, slowly but surely, I got close to taking that time. But you can imagine having a book deal and going on book tour when you're already tired and overworked is just about the worst thing that could have happened. So that's for the next chapter. So we've got our float exploding, lots of fruit. We've got some flowers in there, lots of soda and some basil ice cream to kind of push it over the edge. So thematically, you can see it's full. It's not missing anything. It could be, it's you know, it's going to be hitting all the flavors all around. So it's very much indicative of youth. So that's the first fun one.
Elena had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been captivating just listening to you and watching you make that gorgeous looking drink, by the way. You've reinvented yourself so many times. Do you have advice for people who aren't necessarily satisfied with where they are, but they're afraid to kind of make that jump?
Jump! That's my advice. There's nothing else to it but jump. That's definitely like what I'm hoping you're going to come away from with this, is like from my life advice role, you know, from where I am. And I have, you know, mentees that I work with. Jump, jump, jump. Learn, you know, kind of spot the landing, make sure your knees are strong, but jump. There's nothing you can do on that ledge peering over it forever. Like, you're never going to make it. You have to jump. And as we're going to get into in the next drink, sometimes where you jump is not where you expect, and that's okay, because you're still on the other side. You're still off the first ledge, right? So as long as you're moving, and long as you're gathering tools and not distracting from from that learning, you know, like I think if you take the kind of job that starts to dull your outlook on life, that's the worst mistake you can make. But taking any work that comes that sounds even just a little interesting, go for it. Go for it. You're gonna learn something. So yeah, that's definitely my advice, as you'll see. So moving on to the next drink, I call this the Moribund Marvel. So you can imagine this is going to go also all kinds of places. And I am making this book actually on top of, this drink on top of my book that was published. And the reason is because, as that first sort of phase explained, the place that I was when I wrote this book and when this book came out, it's like the opposite of most people. Most people who spend time writing a memoir would also spend time, you know, publicizing that memoir, trying to sell that book, representing it. I literally ran away from my book tour, moved to Canada. My agent dropped me, and I barely tell anyone that I ever wrote a book. It's always it's sort of hidden in my bio sometimes. So that is why I'm using it as a base. I'm going to get it messy. In fact, in my office right now, I'm using the book as wallpaper. So it's a funny thing. I'm very proud of the work that is in here, but it no longer represents where I am. However, it is the base, right? So I'm using it to put the drink on. I'm using it on my wall in my office because it is a part of my journey and it is a part of who I am. Even if I'm not out here arguing with factory farmers anymore, and I'm not interested in arguing in Facebook groups about food politics or any of that. I have zero energy or interest in that stuff. So, you know, it's a good foundation. So our first thing is we're going to do a little bit of a salt rim. I'm sure you can see why. So we're going to start with a little bit of salt, because it was rough times after that book came out. I knew that I was at the end, and I knew I was weary of the transients, you know, so I was, as I say, like running away from the seas until it was dust, and that's what I did. So I'm going to grab the ice here. So we've got here some lavender ice. The lavender I picked with my son this morning in the garden. When I knew I needed to stop everything, just like that ice, had to kind of seal up everything good and just stop. And thankfully, the forced hiatus of immigrating to Canada and losing the right to work sort of really necessitated that slowdown. It made me sit down, and there was nothing else I could do about it. And as I was sitting and sort of dealing with my kitchen aging body coming up, you know, dealing with my 30s and not being able to work in the field that I had been building up so much momentum in, and also, you know, literally being in physical pain, I was clouded. I was lost. I was completely clouded in what the next phase of my career would be. You know, I could not see the future. I didn't understand the point of anything I had done if I ran away from it. I had so much guilt for that sort of self-care move that I had made. And, you know, I just wondered, like, what was the point of it all? And so when I finally got the right to work, I thought I was done with the kitchen. and I made a completely different move and started studying design. I went to school for industrial design, and I learned to draw with math and, you know, do mechanical engineering calculations and calculate physical forces and all of these things that gave my right brain a complete break, but also sort of sparked a new type of creativity where I was able to see, like, even in the math and sciences, there's so much creativity that you can put into it. And so like, while it kind of let part of my creativity rest, it also awakened these synapses that I had never focused on developing. So doing that and sort of making strides and moving towards a sort of next phase of my career in design, it sort of brought back that confidence. It told me, yes, indeed, you know, you can, like I said, you could do anything. And I forgot that for a while. That had propelled me for so long, but it sort of threw me over the edge so far that I forgot what I could do. And I was afraid to take any more leaps. But really doing that is what forced me into a new phase. And you know, I'm very proud. I won like an award in technical excellence or whatever. You know, I have a cute little plaque for my industrial drafting, and it was just nice to sort of achieve something else. And so with that, you know, the sweet, the bitter, the salty, it all comes together. And so lastly, we're gonna do our final cocktail, which represents now. So this one's called the Graceful Gardener, partially named because I spend so much time in the garden with my son. Oh, yes, you're going to get the recipes. Well, you're going to get some details. I do a lot of processing, so recipes will be a little tricky, but I will definitely give you all of the elements that are in. And if folks have questions, I'm happy to share. So our last drink is a mix of everything, right? A mix of everything we've been through. So started to work in design, and you know, even though it was such a different path than food, it's what, like I said, it's what actually let me start to see what was next. And you know, I sort of ended up very easily moving from designing products into designing menus and dishes for restaurants and doing buying and things like that. So I sort of wound my way back into the kitchen in a new way. And, you know, that allowed me to sort of see my past in a different way and start to contextualize it like, oh, okay, I didn't leave everything behind. I just retooled. I just learned new skills so that I can continue using all of that work that I put in, you know? And so once I felt that confidence rush back, I went ahead and with the CCA, I got my artist credentials validated. So all of those pop-ups, all of that traveling, all of the teaching and all of that was consolidated into interdisciplinary curating. And so I was able to take all of that work and all of that underground stuff and turn it into something that I can actually now apply for funding as a curator. And likewise, having published a book allowed me to become a literary writer according to the Canadian Council of the Arts. So basically, you know, part of those leaps, like I said, make sure your knees are strong. It's that. I could have continued feeling like, oh, I never went to school. I'm not really this. I'm not really that. But actually, once I laid it all out and sent it on to the body who validates who is an artist in this world, they agreed that, you know, this is something that I can build on. And so I would definitely encourage, you know, if you have outside skills you've been building, if you know, you've been putting things together in a unique way, find ways to turn that into something that is validated by your industry so that you can use it, you know? So that's a huge thing that for me has really propelled things in my personal work, is being able to apply for funding as an artist. Because obviously when I was living my like vagabond traveling chef life, that was not in my framework at all. That up. So shortly before COVID, what I was doing was working as, like I said, a menu developer who is a chef that does math while they cook. So it really was the, you know, the perfect sort of amalgamation of everything. But then COVID came, like we all have, Every single person, I know everyone listening here had things drop, was confused of what is life, what's happening next. But I think food people in the food industry, especially every single chef, every single person in this industry that I know had a really hard spring last year. Just it wasn't just losing what was in front of you right now, is this industry going to continue? Do we have a job at all? Like, do we exist? There was a time that every chef I talked to, no, restaurants are done, we're done, you know? And so it was having come a full circle and being so happy that I'd finally gotten back into food in a way that made sense. And then nothing and confusion of what even could be. It was rocked, you know, it rocked me just like it rocked everyone else. But thankfully, you know, because of the way the world works, you know, that ashe, as we say in Afro proverbs, things that come together, it's like nothing's good or bad, it's just is, right? And so I think likewise, like we all lost things in COVID, but I think we all had opportunities come during the last year and a half that never would have appeared. And so I have to be thankful for that. And part of those opportunities was DESTA. The food program itself came out of funding from COVID, and my availability to take that program on came out of losing clients because of COVID. So coming on to DESTA and being able now to sort of use all of my skills in one space has been a salve. It's an amazing opportunity. It's you know, I'm at a stage where my own career is exploding, and I'm really happy with where I am. But even more than that, I'm working with young chefs who are new in their path, and I'm helping them sort of find their way in their own path. And that has been the biggest sort of boost, because you know, they're all where I was, but I didn't have someone like me to talk to. You know, I went to entrepreneurship organizations, and I think anyone who works in food will tell you that's not where we find help. It's not often where you find the best advice, unfortunately, you know, so peer advice and being able to create this sort of peer mentoring group has been, it's just been an amazing thing. And so, you know, from here, I'm happy to share sort of different ways that folks can sort of join in on my work. So, you know, right now, like if you're interested in these drinks, my collective partner, my creative partnership, Atelier Etta, we're doing drinks at Jean Talon Market right now in the stall La Maison Onyx, which is my project with DESTA Food. So you can come go get some sodas, go get some drinks, go check out the chef that's on right now. That's Makia Solo, Solange Paty. She is an amazing chef that is doing Afro-Quebecois food. And so she fits right into what we're doing with the stall this summer, which is providing a platform for Black and Indigenous chefs to come and do pop-ups at the market, expose themselves to new clientele, build their platform, you know, just be there for each other. And already within this first month of working, these opportunities are starting to come out. So for instance, one of my chefs is in the middle of, I'm helping her negotiate an investment deal with somebody who came to her pop-up at the market. So someone came, loved her food, and wants to invest in her business. And so, you know, and that's only happened within the first 4 weeks of this summer project. And so I'm really loving and am humbled by this role that I have to sort of help these chefs get to where they need to go, while at the same time getting to explore my own path and continue to work as a curator and sort of expanding what that means, what to create spaces and to fill, you know, fill my role. And so yeah, that's kind of it. I would say, like, you know, we pulled the 3 drinks together. They're really different, but they're all delicious and they're all a part of the journey. And you know, right now I'm sipping this one, and I'll be staying here for a while. I don't see, you know, this is like a sit back. There's no rush here. I'm blossoming into this space right now, and I don't see any change, but I know there's another cocktail coming, and I can't wait to see what it is. I don't know what the ingredients will be, but yeah, I'm feeling good about where things are right now, and I'm super happy and thankful to be able to share this journey, because I think I know there are a lot of folks out there in non-traditional paths. It's so easy to think you're doing the wrong thing. And I just want to say, like, you're not, keep jumping and keep challenging yourself. And that's it, meander and muddle. And that is it. So
Yeah.
I am happy to answer any questions for the last couple minutes.
Thank you so much, Berlin. Thank you. It was amazing.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, I got a quick question here. So while you were talking about that you were helping out and a lot of the new chefs coming up, someone who doesn't have the chance to have a great mentor as you, what advice or where would you suggest him to get started?
Within food?
Yeah, within food, just starting.
Find a mentor. So even if it's not within an an official organization, and in fact it likely would not be, as I just said, it's the entrepreneurial support for chefs and for food businesses it's a little difficult. So I would say look into, if you don't already work in a restaurant or in food, go find someone. Go to a restaurant that you're interested in, where you like the food, and just start talking people up. See who will take you in. Chefs are notoriously can be a little rough around the edges. We're often very overworked. We, by nature, put too much on our plate, like as a personality trait. And so most chefs are just like really, really busy and overworked. But if you can, try a few, and you're going to find someone or two people who will invite you into the kitchen, who will answer your questions. If you're local, I'm happy to help you. We're starting actually a new project up for people like that. So you could just get 2-day internships in kitchens and just get a chance to pick chef's brains, to see how kitchens run and all of that before you go to culinary school or join the incubator or, ask for a loan for a business. You can just check it out and see if this is really for you. I just ask questions.
Thank you very much. I know you will appreciate it. And I know there was a follow-up. So he did try a lot. So I think, as you said, just keep on trying. Thank you so much for your generosity. I'll let Valerie do the closing.
Thank you so much, Berlin. Do we have time for one last question? I would love to know, you've done so much in your life. It's really inspiring. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.
How would you describe what you want your legacy to be?
My legacy, my life goal is land back in a really physical way. My entire sort of future goal is to buy property and turn it over. So for me, if I get to that place, that's when I will feel like I have left a legacy, is to create spaces, land-based projects where people can learn and deal with food and all of these great things, and also give the land back to the people who rightfully possess it. So that's the legacy that I want to leave. That's sort of the life goal that I must achieve in order to lay on my, on my bed 50 years from now and feel okay, is if that happens. There's really, aside from being a good dad and great husband, good dad, and teaching my kids and all those good things, laying back and knowing that I had a part in righting this humongous wrong is my number one goal.
Thank you so much, Berlin, for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today and
Thank you for having me.
showing me that I need to improve my drink making skills. Can't wait to get the recipes from you. To the audience, Nayo has put Berlin's links in the chat. Really encourage you to connect with him, follow him. If you're interested in food, to the person who asked the question, keep going, keep at it, put yourself out there, find a mentor. Thank you so much for joining us for this session of Power Skills. There's still more to come. We hope you will stay with us for the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.